How's it going, everyone? It's the Natural here. The sport MotoGP has had so many different changes, from bikes, riders, riding style, circuits and eras. In the start of 1949, two-stroke era of 500cc, 350cc, 250cc and 125cc, to the 2002 four-stroke era of 990cc, 800cc, 1000cc, and the new era coming in 2027, the 850cc. Along with Moto 2 and Moto 3 that the sport has become now. So in this video I will be diving into all the different eras of MotoGP from the beginning when the sport began in 1949, the peak of the two-stroke era during the 70s, 80s and the 90s, to the new era of MotoGP in 2002 and into the four strokes, to where the sport is today. In the beginning, in 1949, a new motorcycling world championship was made called the FIM Grand Prix World Championship. In the first few years, it had between 6 and 8 rounds, with iconic circuits likes of Isle of Man, Spa and Assen. And the classes were the 500cc, the 350cc, the 250cc and the 125cc. The first ever 500cc Grand Prix world champion was Leslie Graham on an AJS twin. In the 50s, the 60s and the 70s, when the sport became more popular and more recognizable, more rounds were added to the calendar. So the calendar went from a 6 to an 8 round championship to a 12 to a 15 round championship, along with the two-stroke era Grand Prix bikes. In the 70s, an Italian rider called Giacomo Agostini came into the sport in 1963 in the 250cc class, and he came close quite a few times in the 350cc class, but he got one of his first of 15 world championships in 1966 in the 500cc class on an MV Agusta. In Agostini's career, he has won 7 350cc championships and 8 500cc championships, which you put them together makes him a 15-time world champion in Grand Prix, which to this day is the most Grand Prix world championships won by any rider in the sport's history. Also in the 70s, new manufacturers came into the sport, which were Honda, Yamaha and Suzuki. In the late 70s, 80s and 90s, with Giacomo Agostini's dominance coming to the end, a new breed of riders and a new breed of riding styles and bikes took the sport to another level never seen before. And two riders pioneered that was Kenny Roberts and Barry Sheene. These two had some of the most iconic battles and some of the most iconic, incredible racing during the late 70s to the early 80s, with Barry Sheene winning 2 500cc world championships, both on the Suzuki, while Kenny Roberts winning 3. At the end of the 80s, with Kenny Roberts being a huge pioneer for dirt track racing, but most important of all for Americans in the sport, a new crop of American talent was coming through from the dirt track racing scene. The likes of Eddie Lawson, Wayne Rainey, Kevin Swantz and Freddie Spencer. This started an American dominance in the sport during the start of the 90s and the 80s. America had 11 500cc world championships from that country during this time, and they won 6 championships in a row from America from 1988 to 1993. But with many American riders leaving or forced to retire from the sport, another rider came and dominated the end of the 90s, and that was Mick Doohan. Mick Doohan won 5 consecutive 500cc championships during the late 1990s. But a big crash in 1999 forced him to retire from the sport. In the last years of the two-stroke era, 1999, 2000 and 2001, the sport saw Alex Crivillé became the first Spanish rider to ever win a Grand Prix 500cc championship. Kenny Roberts Jr. won Suzuki's last 500cc two-stroke world championship. And a new superstar was emerging in Valentino Rossi when he won the last 500cc world two-stroke championship in 2001 on his satellite factory Honda. In 2002, a brand new era began in MotoGP, the four-stroke 990cc bikes. And these bikes lasted from 2002 to 2006. And this took the sport to a completely new level with faster, amazing bikes and without a shadow of doubt some of the most incredible, amazing racing the sport had ever seen, ever. During this time, from 2002 to 2006, Honda had without a shadow of doubt the best bike, and for me is one of the most iconic, and quite frankly I still think it's the best piece of machinery ever made in the history of this sport, the V5 RC 211V. And in 2002 and 2003, Valentino Rossi completely dominated the championship during those 2 years, winning on his factory Honda. But in 2004, he made a massive, huge switch from Honda to a manufacturer that never won a championship since Wayne Rainey in 1992, and that was Yamaha. But Honda still had a bike that could win races with Sete Gibernau, Max Biaggi, Nicky Hayden and Marco Melandri. In 2004 and 2005, Valentino Rossi showed it doesn't matter if you have the best bike, it's all about being the best rider. And he was, without a shadow of a doubt, during the 990 era, the best rider on the grid. And he won 2 championships back to back with Yamaha, which was Yamaha's first world championships since Wayne Rainey in 1992. In the last season of the 990cc era, Nicky Hayden won the MotoGP World Championship in a last round showdown at Valencia in 2006. To this day, Nicky Hayden is the last American to win a MotoGP World Championship. 2007 saw MotoGP go into a new era, leaving the 990cc four-stroke era and moving into the 800cc four-stroke era in 2007. Even with the lower top speeds of the 800cc bikes, the racing, and without a shadow of a doubt, the advancements in tech like traction control made the bikes and obviously the racing extremely predictable. And it probably wasn't a great era for great racing during this time. Yes, there were some iconic races in the 800cc era, but it wasn't really a great era for great racing. The first season of the 800cc era in 2007, Casey Stoner won his first MotoGP World Championship and also Ducati's first World MotoGP Championship as well. In 2008 and 2009, Valentino Rossi won his final 2 MotoGP World Championships. Qatar was the first ever night race ever hosted in MotoGP in 2008. Bridgestone became the main tyre supplier in MotoGP in 2009. Due to financial problems, Kawasaki left MotoGP in 2009. And also in 2009 as well, the 250cc World Championship was the last season of it, as it was getting replaced with a 4-stroke Moto2 Championship. In the final 2 years of the 800cc era, 2010 and 2011. Jorge Lorenzo won his first ever MotoGP World Championship in 2010. And also, Casey Stoner left Ducati to go to Honda for 2011. And in 2011, Casey Stoner went on to win his final MotoGP World Championship and the final World Championship in the 800cc era. So that means Casey Stoner was the first to win a World Championship in the 800cc era in 2007 and was the last rider to win a MotoGP World Championship in the 800cc era in 2011. But at the end of the 2011 season, in a race in Malaysia, Marco Simoncelli sadly lost his life. It was not just a huge shock to the motorsport world, but it was a massive, huge shock to the whole sporting world. 2012 saw MotoGP leave the 800cc era and move into the 1000cc era. But also a new category was brought in to MotoGP during the 1000cc era, and that was CRT. We're not going to get in depth what is CRT because that's a whole nother video for another day. Also, this was finally the end of the two-stroke era in Grand Prix racing as 125cc part ways to the four strokes of Moto 3 in 2013. In 2012, Casey Stoner made a massive, huge, big bombshell, and that was he was retiring from the sport. While Jorge Lorenzo in 2012 won his second MotoGP World Championship and the first in the 1000cc era. In 2013, a new rookie superstar was coming into MotoGP, having previously won 2 World Championships, one in 125 and one in Moto 2, and his name was Marc Marquez. In his rookie season, Marc Marquez, he broke so many records that it's quite astonishing just how incredible, remarkable a season he had in 2013. Youngest rider to win 4 races in a season. First rookie to win at Laguna Seca and 3 consecutive Grand Prix races. Youngest rider to win 4 races in MotoGP. Youngest rider to take pole position and youngest MotoGP World Champion at 20 years old. In 2014 and 2015, but we're going to start with 2014, Marc Marquez continued his dominance, what he did in 2013 as a rookie, into 2014. He won 10 consecutive Grand Prix races, from round 1 to round 10, which pretty much gave him his second MotoGP World Championship and making him a back-to-back champion. 2015 saw the sport make a lot of changes. Concessions were brought in to help many manufacturers, the struggling manufacturers like Ducati at the time, and then other new manufacturers like Aprilia and Suzuki came back to the sport to sort of help the sport be more competitive and make other manufacturers close the gap to what was at the time Honda and Yamaha dominating the sport. And this was also the end of the CRT era, as it was rebranded as the Open class. And also in 2015, Valentino Rossi and Jorge Lorenzo took the championship to the last round in Valencia, where Jorge Lorenzo came on top and became a 5-time world champion, 2 in 250 and 3 in MotoGP. 16, 17, 18 and 19 saw Marc Marquez win 4 consecutive MotoGP World Championships. And in 2016, the sport made more changes. Michelin came in to replace Bridgestone as the sole tyre supplier. The Open class from 2015 became mandatory for all classes in MotoGP. So what this meant was everyone, Yamaha, Honda, Ducati, Suzuki, Aprilia, at the manufacturers at the time, all had to be on the exact same spec ECU, which was Magnet Marelli's electronics system. No more of having their own systems like Yamaha and Honda used to have. It was all that system to make the racing fair and more competitive. And also, a standard fuel capacity of 22 litres was also brought in 2016. 2017 saw a new manufacturer come in, and it was very orange, and that was KTM. 2018 and 2019 saw two icons of the sport retire. Dani Pedrosa retired in 2018, being a three-time world champion, 1 in 125 and 2 in 250. But will go down probably as one of the greatest MotoGP riders, may never have won a MotoGP World Championship. And in 2019, Jorge Lorenzo retired, being a 5-time world champion. At the start of the new decade of 2020, 21 and 22, the COVID-19 pandemic caused absolute chaos and pandemonium not only to the world, but also MotoGP's calendar. Because it had a calendar of 20 Grand Prix, but because of COVID, it was slashed to 14, and a lot of back-to-back rounds at Austria and most of the Spanish circuits. This was also the year where Marc Marquez had his career-threatening injury at round 1 in Jerez. So this meant a lot of new stars were starting to emerge in the sport. And Joan Mir was one of them, and he went on to win the 2020 MotoGP World Championship and Suzuki's first ever World Championship in the 4-stroke era. The last rider to win a World Championship for Suzuki was Kenny Roberts Jr. in 2000 in the 2-stroke era in 500cc. Fabio Quartararo created history for France as he became the first French rider ever in the Grand Prix history to be a MotoGP World Champion in 2021. And also in 2021, Valentino Rossi announced his 26-year career in Grand Prix was over, which meant he ended being a 9-time world champion, won the most races, and probably will go down as not only one of the greatest riders in the history of the sport, probably go down as one of the greatest ever sporting icons in all of sport. In 2022, Pecco Bagnaia delivered Ducati's first Riders' World Champion since Casey Stoner in 2007. But in sad news, Suzuki pulled out of the sport that same year as well. In 2023 and in 2024, a new format was introduced that changed the whole complexion of the sport we know today, and that was sprint races. This was introduced for all the rounds on the calendar. Ducati was the dominant manufacturer during 2023 as they won 17 Grand Prix out of 20 and 16 sprint races out of 19. So technically 2023 really was Ducati's peak years. And also in 2023, Pecco Bagnaia made it back-to-back MotoGP World Championships. And in 2024, it was the 75th anniversary of the FIM World Championship, which started all the way back in 1949. In this season saw Marc Marquez come back from, without a shadow of a doubt, the absolute despair and horrible and just really bad times that he was having at Honda during his whole entire injury, surgeries and everything he was going through from 2020 to 2023. So he left Honda in 2024 to go to Gresini Ducati to have that feeling of enjoyment and fun back in racing again. And this was also the season that saw both Japanese manufacturers for the first time since 1970 fail to win a race. Jorge Martin became a MotoGP World Champion and became the first independent satellite team rider to win the MotoGP World Championship in the 4-stroke era, and the first since Valentino Rossi in 2001 on the 500cc bikes. In 2025 and also next year in 2026 will be the last 2 years of the 1000cc era as the sport goes into a new era in 850s in 2027. And with so many changes coming in 2027, one of them obviously is Pirelli replacing Michelin as the main tyre supplier. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the different eras in MotoGP. We really have just travelled back in time from 1949 through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, to the early 2000s, to the start of the 4-stroke era of MotoGP in 2002, the 990cc era, the 800cc era, the 1000cc era, and the new era coming in 2027, the 850cc era. If you like this video, then hit the like button and subscribe as well. I hope you all have an amazing day out there, and I naturally see you in another video.